What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's reaction video is US enemies are not gonna like this video. It's a good job we're not enemies.
No, we're not.
Good job we're friends. I'm pretty sure this is gonna go down the route of you guys being overpowered, ridiculously powered. That's the same
I'm
thing.
guessing it's a military one.
I'm guessing so.
We can't see anything. Nothing's
Can't see
giving
anything.
it away.
No clues one bit. 60 minutes, so strap in, smash that button, smash the subscribe button. All we know is your enemies aren't gonna like it. Probably because you guys are just badass and powerful.
Yeah.
But let's find out. Smash that button, guys. Smash the subscribe button. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Let's check it out. US enemies are not going to like this video. Let's go.
Look at this chart. It compares military budgets of countries.
There we
but
go.
It's a bit different because it doesn't compare one country.
Military.
Okay.
Military, isn't it? Yeah.
Military. I'd say military, but it probably is military.
Maybe it's just different places, different pronounce it.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway,
let's try it again. Let's go.
Chart. It compares military budgets of countries, but it's a bit different because it doesn't compare one country's military spending to another, but instead compares the US's military spending with the cumulative total of the 9 other countries' military spending. We're all on the top 10 list of biggest spenders. The reason? Well, the United States spent over $800 billion on its military in 2021.
It's mental,
thus
innit?
outspending South Korea, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Germany, France, Russia, the UK, India, and China combined. So there's frankly no worthwhile comparison to be made here. Yet still, after fighting wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and after a trade war with China, as well as unfriendly relations with Iran and North Korea, the US has its fair share of enemies who undoubtedly want to hurt them in one way, shape, or form.
Who don't want to be watching this video.
Hypothetically speaking, despite such a well-equipped military, could an enemy ever successfully invade the US or make devastating damages to the nation in some way? Well, as it turns out, this question was a bit harder to answer than I initially planned, because the military is only one of the reasons why the US is so unconquerable. You see, the US is in an incredible position, geographically, and its secret weapon might therefore be its location. All you have to do is look at this map to understand why. For over 150 years, America's territory has stretched
so big. I always forget how big Canada is.
Canada's just huge.
Yeah, but like...
It's just most of it's...
This. Like, I never realised how big Canada actually is.
Oh, yeah, it's just like...
A lot of it's inhabitable.
This line here is uninhabitable, yeah, because it put... Well, some people live there, but it's very frozen, stuff like that, low temperatures. I think, like, isn't something like 90% of the population live on the border somewhere? I may be wrong on that, but I think it is something
so big,
like that.
isn't it?
It's huge.
Weapon might therefore be its location. All you have to do is look at this map to understand why. For over 150 years, America's territory has stretched all the way across the continent from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. These huge coasts separate the US from any potential enemy. So even in wartime, the American mainland is very well protected. Take World War II for example, when America fought in both Europe and Asia at the same time. Barely any attacks happened on US soil during the entire war. That meant American factories could keep making planes and weapons without interruptions, unlike the constantly bombed Soviet and British factories. On top of that, the Defense Production Act allowed the president to allocate materials and facilities for national defense, direct companies to prioritize government orders, and offer loans to companies to make this happen fast. In 2020, this law was used to increase the production of ventilators and medical-grade masks. So clearly, it's a very useful law to have in the toolbox, since the US still has a domestic industrial base with major shipyards, aviation, and automotive factories. A wartime scenario could easily involve switching to wartime production, so this makes sense.
That's a lot.
That is mad, and it was still going. It just kept going, didn't it?
That's a
the
lot of
existing
vehicles.
military industry, which is already making tanks, planes, weapons, and warships for the US military. Factories on US soil are a huge advantage, because the US military can protect its supply chain simply by defending its own territory. Very little has to come from outside compared to its enemies.
What did you just say? You want a tank?
Can I have one?
You know what? If you can ever follow.
Can I just drive one on the roads, or can you not do that?
Yeah, I don't think you can do that. Okay. If we're ever rich enough to have our own private field, I imagine you could have an unarmed tank one day. We'll build our own, but You guys need to get
I'll have a plane
subscribing.
instead.
You need to have a whole US to subscribe and watch every single one of our videos.
I'll just
and we've
take
got
a plane
chance.
instead.
Just take a plane.
Or
I'm
a
gonna
Range
get a
Rover.
plane.
I'll take a
What?
Range Rover instead, actually.
We would need to constantly run supplies across an entire ocean. I mean, just look at the size of the Atlantic Ocean and the even bigger Pacific to get an idea of just how long enemy supply chains would have to be. Not to mention the fact that with today's satellites, it would be trivially easy to spot an invasion coming from thousands of miles away and take out enemy shipments before they ever reached the US coast.
Wow.
Supply lines
That's
are
crazy.
critical in any war, and the US
Mental.
military is well known for its excellent logistics capabilities. They have the added advantage of the 45,000-mile highway system, which was designed with troop movements in mind. On top of that, the
A lot
US
in the
has
east.
140,000 miles of freight railway infrastructure.
Oh, wow.
I'm sure
I didn't
this
know
that.
can
East,
be
isn't
a
there?
double-edged sword,
I suppose
as enemies could
the East
use
is more built up, majority
Yeah,
of it,
I
isn't it?
suppose, yeah.
this infrastructure to penetrate into America's heartland. And infrastructure could definitely be a weak point if not properly guarded. A good example of this would be this pipeline that runs over 5,500 miles from Texas to New Jersey
Oh,
and carries
wow.
nearly 45% of the East Coast's fuel supply. In May
Wow,
2021,
that's
a
mental.
cyber attack shut down the pipeline for 5 days. And this isn't a fluke either. China and Russia both support cybercrime
Russia's
groups
huge.
that regularly attack government agencies and companies. The former head lawyer for the NSA, Stuart Baker, told the Washington Post, quote, "We're fighting the cyber equivalent of a land war in Asia every day."
Oh,
but
wow.
America's infrastructure is
Every
more
day.
than just highways and internet cables. Back in the day, another kind of highway already connected the Midwest from north to south, the Mississippi River, and the connected Missouri River is the 4th longest river system in the world.
Yep.
So yeah, this river has always been crucial to
A lot of
connecting the
supplies.
economies of major cities like New Orleans, Minneapolis, and St. Louis.
Yeah, we know a bit
Today,
about
the
Mississippi
river
River,
is
don't
still
we?
used to ship goods across America. So during an invasion, the Mississippi could likely help move troops and weapons too. What's impressive about the US's geography is how challenging it makes the US to conquer, and that might have to do with the diversity of terrains like deserts, swamps, and mountains. The Appalachian Mountains in the east and the Rocky Mountains in the west serve as major barriers to inland invasion, and the Great Lakes in the northeast form yet another barrier.
Yeah.
The result is that the flatter areas along the southern border seem like the best entry point. But the US compensates for these weaknesses with huge numbers of troops stationed in California and Texas. The coasts aren't any easier to invade with hundreds of thousands of troops stationed in military bases. Not to mention the fact that the US has peaceful relations with its neighbors to the north and south, which both have smaller
True, which
populations
helps.
and militaries if any turmoil was to unfold.
Yeah.
To the east and west, the US has no neighbors as previously discussed, a fact which has led America to focus on other things instead of imminent invasions.
Okay.
On top of that, the NATO treaty requires European and Canadian allies to come to America's defense if it's ever attacked. Oh yeah, and in addition to its current military personnel, the US still maintains the selective service system. See, all males from 18 to 25 have to sign up for a lottery to be drafted in the case of a national emergency. During the height
Okay, I
of
think we got that in the
World War
UK
II,
as well.
The US drafted over 3 million men per year. So this system could potentially expand the US's military personnel by several million.
Ooh.
And we're not even done yet, because besides all this, an invasion is still very unlikely for another reason: the Pentagon's unrivaled resources. As I mentioned in the beginning, the US's defense budget is unrivaled. The US spent almost 3 times as much as China in 2021
That's mental,
and 10
innit?
times more than Russia. The result is that no country has enough ships or planes to get past the US forces.
Also,
According to one
I don't know if he's going to mention. I imagine he will mention it because it's quite a good video. The amount of people who has guns in America as well. There's like a gun
Yeah.
for every person there. A lot of them are trained as well. So even if you exclude the military stuff like that, all them people to defend
Yeah.
as well, it's a lot of people.
Yeah, it's not worth
military
it.
expert, quote, "The amphibious assault capability of the combined militaries of the world are simply too insignificant to get a beachhead on a coast." And then we of course have the civilians, who have even more guns than the military.
Yeah,
So maybe
there we
armed
go.
citizens could also join the fight against invaders. I mean, it's a possibility. But
It's
anyway,
mental, isn't it?
urban warfare presents more challenges than fighting in open combat and often gives an advantage to the country defending its own territory. We only have to look at Russia's failed invasion of Kiev for proof of this factor. While urban areas make up a small amount of US territory, any invader would have to take control of cities to conquer the country, since 82% of the population lives in these cities. Another advantage of armies defending their own country from invasion is the will to fight. According to the RAND Corporation, a think tank closely tied to the Pentagon, will to fight means the disposition and decision to fight, to keep fighting, and to win.
Okay, yeah, for your country and stuff.
The Times' will to fight was emphasized in US military doctrine, demonstrating just how vital it is to military victories. You can clearly see how that influenced the outcome of World War II and the Vietnam War. When a country is invaded, like Vietnam...
I mean, that's quite a huge thing, isn't it? You guys are so patriotic. You're going to fight for your flag versus a whole Spangled Banner story as well, which then makes you want to go and protect your country. Yeah. If you're someone who doesn't want and you're being forced to sign up, are you going to really be risking your life too much? So it's a massive thing, isn't it?
Definitely.
Vietnam was. It's natural that the invaded country is more motivated to defend its land. I think it's safe to assume the same would apply during an invasion of the US. But let's shift gears for a bit and discuss one enormous US advantage I haven't mentioned, which is self-reliance for its food, energy, and weapons needs.
Yeah,
take these green areas for example. This land is mostly used for agriculture since only 2% of America's land is in urban areas.
Oh, wow.
This low-lying land is a major reason why the US is nearly self-sufficient in agriculture and even exports food to many countries around the world. Wow. It also explains why America now actually has the most arable land in the world. That's right, the US has more arable land than India and China. What's more surprising is that India is only a third the size of the US, and China is slightly smaller but can only sustain large populations near its east coast. The crazy thing is that both of those countries have over 1.3 billion people, or about 1 billion more
so
than the
many people.
And since the US is only projected to grow by another 100 million people over the next century, the US likely has enough resources to support a billion-plus population, but they don't need to. As for energy, the US also has...
It's mental though. Really think about it. India, I didn't realise, not how small India is, it's still placed, but I knew they had so many more people. I didn't realise it was a lot smaller than the US.
No, definitely it's loads smaller, isn't it?
That many people crammed into that is mental to think, isn't it? Oh, my bad.
Petroleum and gas, especially in parts of Texas. It has around 44 billion barrels of proved crude oil reserves and almost 500 trillion cubic feet of natural gas reserves.
Just a bit.
In fact, when you include biofuels, the US could be considered the largest oil producer in the world. It seems like even the bad parts of US geography have a major silver lining. The Appalachian Mountains on the east coast that I mentioned earlier aren't suited for farming, but they do have huge coal deposits that have been exploited for decades. And surprisingly, at least to me, America has the world's largest coal reserves, and loads of other natural resources from energy to metals. But to share a bit of a weakness of the US, it turns out it doesn't have every metal it needs to defend itself. You see, this shiny looking rock is a mineral called antimony, and is critical for making bullets and other weapons, and even night vision goggles. While antimony played an important role in World War II ammunition production, the last mine in the US closed in 1997. The US is therefore reliant on China and Russia, its two biggest military rivals, for supply of this critical mineral. So the US does have weaknesses, but who could actually have the military might and, most importantly, motivation to try and invade the US? Well, the latest US defense strategy names the People's Republic of China as the US's most consequential strategic competitor, and notes that Russia poses acute threats. Beyond these two big threats, it also mentions North Korea and Iran. But let's focus on China for a bit. It's true that China is slowly building up its military capabilities, but it isn't even ready to launch an invasion on the island of Taiwan, let alone the west coast of the United States. I don't think I even need to mention how the loss of its largest trading partner would devastate the Chinese economy. Still, there's some reason for concern. If China disabled American satellites, it could debilitate the US military's ability to monitor troop movements in real time. If you're thinking this sounds like science fiction though, you'd be wrong, because in 2007, China successfully destroyed one of its own satellites with a ballistic missile. Floating 850 kilometers above the Earth, the destroyed satellite is at a similar similar altitude to US intelligence satellites.
So we've got the
China
capability.
could theoretically destroy them too. In terms of Russia, well, they have now performed a similar test, which endangered the crew of the ISS. Taking out satellites is a bit extreme though, because it causes hazardous space debris that would affect all current and future satellites. That includes Russia's and China's satellites. But Russia and China are already interfering with US satellites on a daily basis.
The cyber
They're just
war's
using
mental.
lasers and jammers instead of trying to shoot them down. What's even scarier though is China's recent investments in AI and quantum computing, which could change the future of warfare. I mean, imagine how hard it would be for the Pentagon to strategize against an enemy using an AI supercomputer to calculate decisions in milliseconds. But if we look at Russia again for a second, their military has turned out to be much more disorganized and incompetent than we imagined before their invasion of Ukraine in
Yeah,
early
that's kind of shown that,
2022.
hasn't it?
Still, they're definitely a force to be reckoned with nearly 1 million troops, thousands of vehicles and specialized hacker units. As for other potential attackers, North Korea for example may boast that their nuclear weapons can reach the US mainland, but owing to their low budget and antique equipment, there's no way they could invade the entire US.
Yeah.
Iran is a similar story, except that they don't yet have a nuclear warhead, although they're not far off. Realistically speaking, both countries use nukes to preserve the regime rather than actually use them against their enemies.
Yeah, let's hope no one
Cuba
actually
and
uses
Yeah.
Venezuela are two other enemy nations in the US's backyard, but their troop numbers and military budgets are hardly enough to invade the United States. And if all else fails to stop an invasion, we shouldn't forget that America is a nuclear-armed nation itself. It has a triad of
Just-
air, land, and sea
They've got a few. They've got a few, haven't they? So which is why it's more of a deterrent, isn't it? Don't send a nuke at me, I'll send a nuke at you.
Yeah, but if anyone sends a nuke, we're dead anyway.
That's what I mean. It's like if you want to win, you're going to lose. If that makes sense. If you want to win with a nuke, we all lose. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
So it's a deterrent.
I don't,
That's the idea.
Yeah, but I just don't see the point in a nuke because even if they nuked America, America can't nuke back because we'll be dead.
No, they can. As soon as that nuke's
So does
sent,
it take time to?
it's it's not instant. It's not like a press boom. As soon as that's sent, they'll pick it up, and Americans will be sending. And there's
And
also
then, so
submarines
if there was
around
a
the world.
chance that
Oh.
China could have survived their own.
Yeah,
not
there's
gonna, 'cause America will make sure
everyone
they
will
don't.
know about it, and everyone will send them in theory.
So what will happen? We'll all just stand there and go, we're going to die in a minute.
Yeah, I guess so. Hopefully, I don't think we'll
God.
ever get to that. It's all of a deterrent, isn't it?
But just don't do that. No one wins if we do that.
Exactly. It's just, but if only one person had them, there would be that real threat. But because a lot of people have them, it's kind of like, all right, you don't want to mess with
Oh my
me.
god, let's just not do that.
missiles, which make it impossible to take out entirely. Land missiles are stored in the center of the country, and the sea missiles are in submarines, which are constantly on the move, hidden away without a blip on the radar. Since the Cold War though, nuclear weapons have acted more as a deterrent rather than a direct threat.
Yeah.
You see, the principle of mutually assured destruction essentially means anyone who uses a nuke will get nuked back, launching a chain reaction of nuclear warfare, eventually obliterating Earth and ending humanity.
There
Oh
we
my
go.
But
god.
just for
There
fun,
we go.
let's compare nuclear arsenals. Alright, so the US and Russia currently have around 5,000 nukes, with around 1,500 deployed at heavy bomber bases and on intercontinental missiles. And then we of course have China. It has a couple hundred nuclear weapons, but none of them are deployed. Now, these numbers might seem high since they can literally eradicate humanity, but this is actually a low point from the peak of 70,000 nukes worldwide in the mid-1980s.
70,000.
What's still
What?
quite worrying though is that while the US claims to have decommissioned over 11,000 nuclear warheads since 1994, China and Russia are thought to be increasing their stockpile. But despite this, I hope you can see how costly it would be to even attempt an invasion of the US.
No, let's
Any
not.
hypothetical invasion would have to overcome the US's huge military and geographical advantages to gain any ground.
Yeah.
While it is plausible that a major state actor like China or Russia could take out satellites and hack critical infrastructure, they'd also have to contend with the millions of well-equipped troops on the ground
They ain't
and
getting
a
anywhere
hostile
near.
armed population. So
No.
realistically, a physical invasion isn't really a possibility, but what if America's enemies could get what they wanted without an invasion?
Okay.
Well, it turns out it's much easier to conquer hearts and minds in an information war than to win with soldiers.
Oh, information
on the
war's
ground.
mental, innit?
And that
It's-
might have something
Yes.
to do with
It
Not
is
much to do about
mind
that, to be
blowing.
honest.
There's nothing you can do about it, but it's mind blowing how you can be people can be influenced so much,
Yeah.
not know it, and it's just people trying to just get you to go one
Yeah.
way. I'm not saying I'm not influenced at times. I'm not saying you are
No.
influenced, but in life in
Yeah.
general, it is mental, isn't
Yeah,
it? Such a mental thing.
This influence campaign in the 2016 US presidential elections. See, after a 3-year investigation, a
that the Russian
bipartisan
president?
US
Putin,
Senate
yeah.
committee recently concluded that Russia conducted an influence campaign to help Donald Trump get elected. If that's not shocking enough, the report states that Vladimir Putin himself ordered the hacking of Democratic Party emails to be leaked over WikiLeaks. The FBI now has a warrant out for 12 Russian military intelligence
Oh,
officers
wow.
it believes interfered in the 2016 elections.
Ooh.
So this is a serious incident. A recent report by a group of intelligence agencies claims Russia tried to interfere again in 2020, though on a smaller scale. Whether Russia continues to meddle in US politics in the future or not, the damage may already be done as Americans increasingly report a loss of faith in democracy and government institutions.
wow.
But that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
That flew by.
Yeah, that was actually interesting.
Very interesting.
Definitely a bit scary.
It wasn't just a case of the US is more powerful, bye-bye. But
yeah,
it was good.
It actually explained it, but I just don't ever want to be nuked.
You just think about nukes now,
I
aren't
just
you?
think about someone could just flip that switch and then it's bye-bye.
Yeah, pretty much. Smash that button, guys. Smash that subscribe button as well. The absolute legends. I feel like we learned a bit there. Good job with friends. Always, as always.
To everybody.
Yeah.
I'm now friends with everybody in the whole world. I'm friends with everyone.
Yeah, don't nuke me, please. Smash that button, guys. Smash subscribe and watch the video.
Oh, fantastic.
And we'll see you, legends, in the next one. Peace.